First world problems.
Yeah, seriously. All right, everyone. Let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's May 6th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We are a DevOps accelerator. That means we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it with you and then showing you the ropes. If that sounds interesting, go to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in to participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up with an email so you can share it with your team. Well, with that said, let's kick this off. So the agenda today, first, see if we can answer any community questions. There's been some good ones posted in the Office Hours channel. Here are some things that I saw that came up this past week that I'm sharing. And, oh, yeah, there's that CVE about the salt server. Did you guys see that? That sounded pretty bad. Let's see here. It was in the Office Hour or in the security channel. Man, so Algolia, if you guys all know, they were recently hacked, and it seems like the hack du jour is installing a Bitcoin miner. So yeah, they talk about their post-mortem on what exactly happened to their salt server. My response to this is, wait, why was it even publicly accessible, especially for a company of this level of exposure? I mean, I can understand a smaller, startup, flying by the seat of their pants, but Algolia, I mean, they're powering a serious amount of search for a lot of big companies. That I don't get it. Any commentary on this hack, if you guys have seen it?
My only commentary is wondering how many people are running salt. I know one or two, and they're always highly technically skilled individuals that, would never allow something like this to happen. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I was going to say something along the opposite lines of that, something along the lines of, the average software engineer in the world is, 22 years old, right out of college, and doesn't really know anything.
Yeah, I can relate to both of those. We were bidding actually on a contract that I ended up declining when I saw the complexity of their salt stack. We were going to help them with their Kubernetes migration, and it totally falls in line with what Zach was saying. This engineer, really talented, built up an amazing infrastructure with this, but I didn't want to touch it. It was beyond our ability.
Yeah, I like Python, not that much, So.
What tell the people who are obviously not me what salt is exactly?
It's a configuration management system that basically runs off of Python and something called pillars, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and minions. That's what they use.
Okay, so it's an alternative to something like Ansible or whatever.
Exactly. It's in the camp of all the legacy configuration management tools out there for managing classical infrastructure like VMs and stuff like that. So it's in the same category as Puppet, Ansible, CF Engine, Chef, yada yada yada.
So that's why I don't know a lot about it, because cattle instead of pets.
It's lesser used, but it's exceptionally fast, and for a agent-based type of infrastructure.
If it's old setup of an infrastructure with, for example, Ansible, then what's the new? How do you bootstrap an instance in AWS and make sure everything is installed on that instance?
So my argument, and which has been working for us for years now, I can't recall the last time we've deployed a standalone instance. I mean, everything we've done for the last 3-4 years has been on Kubernetes. So I don't dispute that there are companies that can't do that and can't get away with that. and we've naturally biased towards another, kind of company. But that's the reality.
Yeah,
a lot of the basics
exactly.
can be the basic bootstrapping is done with Cloud Init. Any higher order bootstrapping of the host nodes, we've deployed Helm charts that work as like a daemon set and configure the host OS that way. So even when we need to do host level OS modifications, we've been using, inside of Kubernetes, we've been using the Kubernetes resources to do that.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to talk about Cloud Init. I mean, if you're doing more than 20 lines or so of Cloud Init to stand up your Kubernetes nodes, then I don't know what you're doing. But same here. I mean, everything's running on Kubernetes now.
Yeah. But Marcin, I know
Terraform.
you had a lot of experience in this area in the past.
Terraform, yeah.
Do you have
Yes.
any insights or inputs on
Right.
this?
So Kubernetes cannot support some applications in terms, for example, of cost. So we had an application that was stitching the ads in a podcast company that I worked for. And this was really complicated in Kubernetes because, first of all, we need to deploy the pods in a manner that we couldn't have we use the kube proxy, so we couldn't have cross instance traffic because it would add a lot of latency. Additionally, when you're using Kubernetes, you need to use something like ingress to route the traffic, or you need to expose it on the node pod. So when you run a service which is using a lot of traffic and data, sending traffic out of Amazon costs a lot, then you think about optimization. And in the middle of that, you got also, we used ALB. In the middle of that, you got ALB, which is also using a lot of resources. And because of that, the pricing of the ALB, because AWS needs to spin more of the ALBs in the background, so you pay for a number of ACUs used. So to mitigate that and to connect from the cloud front directly to the instances without exposing node pods of Kubernetes, we had to run it, and to limit the cost, we had to run it outside of the Kubernetes. So it was
as a cost saving, decision there, which makes sense, and probably engineering something in Kubernetes to achieve the same thing would have taken considerably more effort.
It was also performance decision a little bit, because the performance without Kubernetes overhead, ALB, multiple hops, kube proxy, IP tables was just better. And it was real-time service that was stitching a lot of data to so it matters, the latency that matters, especially for the first bytes downloaded.
Off the top of my head though, just considerations, obviously this is a project long gone and committed down another path. Was using an NLB, for example, one of the considerations over using the ALB, which I think would be more cost effective? And then two, I think there are ways you can game this to avoid the cross-zone traffic. For example, ensuring that Nginx isn't routing to pods in other node pools that are in other availability zones.
Mm-hmm.
Would be one consideration. All right. Any other thoughts on this?
I just can say that I currently face a similar, like the opposite of the issue. Like, people have avoided Kubernetes and all the other things. And currently I have 62 load balancers in production, which cost around, I don't know, $2,000 a month right now. So this all could be avoided with like an ingress and having some nicer system in place. So, but yeah, all has its ups and downs, and
definitely point taken.
With me, like, I'm a huge Kubernetes fan, so
Eric, also another issue why to run something outside of the Kubernetes currently is to build containers.
Well, yes and no, though. I mean,
Yeah. No.
Right. So yeah, like we've gone down this path. It actually came up, interestingly enough. I forget her name. Somebody else in the community has been doing a lot of stuff with Jenkins. And somebody else asked, oh, I guess it wasn't her, somebody else, about Docker and Docker builds and why they aren't good on Kubernetes. But I think the bigger problem is just using Docker, right? One should be using something like Canico or Docker build kit or any of the daemonless approaches, and then you can do it securely. But point taken, yeah, if you strictly need to use the Docker daemon and then doing that under Kubernetes, maybe reconsider doing that from a security perspective. All right, cool. So let's see here. There was a question that came up in office hours from Pierre. You had you whipped up a quick mock here. It's you're curious if this would be something useful for others, a tool which can aggregate events from multiple sources into a single timeline. Yeah, do you want to give a little bit more context and like how is this different from like sending deployment notifications like to Prometheus, where you could kind of do the same thing?
It might be the same thing, and you could also basically display this in Grafana. I'm not sure if it needs its own application or if it like deserves its own application. I'm pretty confident that you could build something similar pretty easily. Also in Grafana or Kibana or wherever you want to, but in general, like, is it something that people would use if they knew how to do it? So for me, basically the interesting point here is when I investigated an incident, I have usually an alert time, and then I want to know what happened the 5 to 10 minutes before, or like an hour before, or what other kinds of things have happened. And getting all this data together and getting a bigger picture is like almost impossible right now, for me at least, because I have like 10 to 15 different sources where I can check for things. Like I have AWS CloudWatch, I have Prometheus instances, I have Opportunity, which aggregates other alert sources, I have Segment, I have Slack channels, I have Jira, and so on and so on. It's just like super, super dreadful to actually have all this information visible. Of course, this might be able to, like, people might be able to achieve this if they would say, okay, we all switch it now to one single tool. But on the other end, I was thinking, well, might be also pretty easy to aggregate just multiple sources together.
So let me qualify, or let me, what's the word I'm looking for? Let me downscope maybe what you're saying. Or like the problem I see is, first of all, everyone has a different monitoring system. So we don't want to replace the monitoring system, right? But to your point, harvesting or collecting all these different events happening from like the AWS status page or third-party services that you depend on, or GitHub, and then making that very easy to have a fire hose of events coming from external systems that then I can figure out how I integrate it with my monitoring system. Maybe there's something there for that. Because like to your point, like I'd like to see it in some of our customers, Datadog. Recently, I've been telling them to make sure that they subscribe to all the RSS feeds in their Datadog. We can do something similar with Grafana. So that's my 2 cents. Marcin, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just I'm a fan of single point of entry. So if you have multiple monitoring system, you should try to not aggregate them, because then you will have another service which will be a single point of failure, and you need to support it, you need to patch it, you need to take care of it, and you need to monitor it. So this is, I wouldn't go that route. I would try to consolidate what you have into one monitoring tool, and that would be my approach. So for example, if you use Prometheus and CloudWatch, I would use CloudWatch Exporter to download metrics to Prometheus and alert on them in Prometheus, for example. Yeah,
right. I'm already doing this kind of, but like I just was wondering, like, because you don't get merge request notifications there, for example. Like, you don't know when actually a developer has pushed the change exactly. Like, currently, I annotate my Prometheus labels with the application version, but this gets also expensive because, well, every label you add adds a new timeline, and it's like a lot of storage that you waste. So for me, I'm already doing all this kind of stuff, but I'm like thinking, okay, if I all put it into Prometheus, at some point, do I overdo it? Is it just like too much? And I also don't always want to have like a graph. Sometimes I just want to have like the event, like tell me when a scale up and scale down has happened. And not like, oh yeah, I have now 5 services of this or 5 replicas of this.
Okay, so I don't think you need to know when systems scaled up and scaled down, because what you want to see is if the system is healthy. It doesn't matter if it runs on 1 pod, on 100 pod. It matters if
it's correlating that an event, some change happened. So we went from 2 nodes to 1 node. And then if you just had a line there that, look, a scaling event happened here, and then suddenly it'd be a lot easier to then to understand why did we suddenly see a wrath of 502s or something.
Yeah, or why is my latency going up? Oh yeah, we scaled down. Okay, well, that's interesting to know. And then I can start to look, okay, because sometimes like response time goes up because, well, there's fewer instances available, but sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, a change was introduced. And kind of having this change.
There's an image in DevOps Handbook that talks exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to find it and post a picture of it.
Okay,
I love it.
I can pull it up on my laptop. I have it as a DevOps Handbook.
If I were DevOps
Handbook,
yeah, the yellow one, DevOps Handbook.
The yellow one. Okay, no, I don't have that one.
That was not visible at all with the background.
I know it.
I know, but I know the
so if I were doing something like this, I know FluentD has a ton of plugins.
Right.
So I would aggregate in Elasticsearch and then display in Kibana if that were something I was working on.
Yeah,
okay.
Well,
because FluentD can talk to all kinds of stuff.
For sure. Eric, maybe you can show the screenshot that I posted. Maybe it makes it a bit easier what I actually want to achieve.
Wait, screenshot is the one.
It's office hours.
Yeah, this one. Well, but these are what are called annotations, right, in Grafana.
Yeah.
And like just for context of a working example, so this is how you can do a curl basically to an endpoint with a timestamp, and then you add your annotations to that. So in this case, this would be a deploy annotation, and in this case, some kind of an alert. I don't know if I would have the alert in here, but I think these would be events materially happening in this complex system. So you can correlate them to to metrics.
So to sum up, because you had, I think you had multiple questions in what you said. So to sum up, the Prometheus should be monitoring the health of a system, and what you're looking at, what you want to know, is additional data, which shouldn't be kept in Prometheus. So like we said, so Grafana in dashboard that will tell you the state of a system that you're looking at, and you will see their events that are attached or attached to that as annotations, for example.
This is where a lot of the fully integrated like Datadog solutions shine, where they have logs and metrics in the same dashboard. I guess is when we're stitching these things together, we lack that a little bit. Now, Grafana, for example, just added their logs product. I forget what it's called, but
Loki, I think.
Loki.
Yeah, Loki. Has anyone used that? I'm just curious for my own.
I did.
You did?
Yeah, this is pretty cool. It differs from Kibana in terms of visualization. It's completely different thing, but what is nice, I think, is that you can kind of use it like Prometheus, and I guess then if they will, because it wasn't mature enough when I started to use it, but when it will be mature enough, I think it would replace the Kibana, because Kibana is really expensive to run, really expensive to take care of, where Loki should be something like Prometheus, like pretty simple stuff, And if we can alert on it, that it would be great.
Andrew, you want to? Oh, okay. You're sharing some. Wait,
yeah,
no,
then in
thing.
Grafana
There we
dashboard, it
go.
would be really simple to get everything in one place. Where
Doesn't Loki also offer like some sort of long-term data retention for Prometheus, like into S3 or blob storage?
Yes.
Wait, what? You can use. Wait, you can say that one more time.
I think Loki also offers some kind of like extended storage options for Prometheus, where you can do long-term data storage for Prometheus into like S3 or an object store.
Oh, that's interesting. So wait, like using it as your backend for Prometheus instead of one of like Thanos or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I'm thinking of Thanos. You're right.
Oh,
no,
I get the gods
also
confused.
okay.
Loki also has like an S3 backup feature similar to Elasticsearch, where you can basically just say, "Hey, export all of these logs into." The storage backend that Loki uses is very much different, like to something that is like Elasticsearch. So it also indexes very different and search is very different.
yeah, it's not full text search like in Elasticsearch.
Yeah, it's different. But Andrew, I have not written the DevOps the book yet from Kim Greeny or whatever she is called. But what is the context of these images? Like, is it something that just explains, okay?
It's what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Right. Yeah, it is.
It's so like the one that has logins. You know, you're showing when deploys have. No, the last one is probably the best. So you're showing the black line is the deployment, and then you immediately start getting PHP warnings, and then you fix it and your PHP and you deploy again and your PHP warnings immediately fall off, and then
right. Yeah,
what'd you do in there?
It's actually the kind of stuff that I want to have like in a dashboard somehow. But yeah. I didn't know that Grafana supports annotations. The only issue that I have with it, I run Grafana fully stateless right now. So like I don't care if my Grafana instance dies. I care if my Prometheus dies.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to check it out.
Yeah, we're just using EFS as the persistent volume for Grafana, so we get
okay. Oh, maybe. Yeah, I just have to replicate it because currently my Grafana runs basically separate per stage. So
is Mikhail, you're on the call, or Michael?
Yeah, I am.
So have you given Loki a shot?
Yeah, but not in large scale. But it's a tool we're going to use, I guess, in production next. But for the smaller scale, I'm actually looking at ClickHouse and Loghouse, which looks very interesting.
So this just recently came up for us, the ClickHouse stuff, because we've been running Sentry on-prem now for a little over a year, and it looks like Sentry 9, the switch between Sentry 9 and 10 is massive, and one of the new dependencies is ClickHouse. Anybody using ClickHouse today? I'm curious the effort in running it, and
it's not too hard to set a Helm file to deploy the thing. It wasn't. I did it once as a proof of concept.
What are the durability requirements for it, or like what does it use for storage? Can it use like S3 as a backend, or does it need a database? Or I don't know. I haven't looked at it at all.
ClickHouse is a database, I think, isn't it?
It is a standalone. Okay, so it's a database. Just it'd be nice if we didn't have to worry about the backing store for that. It could just be an S3 bucket.
For me, it looked interesting because of the way it was so accessible and easy to search in and look through the logs, etc. And I mean, I've been using Splunk before and other systems as well, and most of them are pretty painful when it comes to querying and stuff, and it's slow. It sounds really good, and the first install I did seems very reasonable, but I don't have any data in it yet to really tell how well it works.
Okay. Just zooming through here. Anybody else have ClickHouse experience?
Maybe till next week then.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, should we move on to the next question maybe that was posted? Now, HS, I don't know if you are on the call today. I pinged you earlier, didn't get a response.
Yes, I am.
Oh, awesome. Did you get resolution on this? Would you like to open this up to the greater audience? I think we're about 25 people on the call today.
Awesome. Yes, I think I would love to.
All
Hi,
right.
everyone.
Yeah, do you want to
So,
give a synopsis of your problem in maybe about 30 seconds to 1 minute?
Okay. All right. So my infrastructure runs. So I have an app that runs on. It's a Ruby app, right? And then the Ruby is kind of like an old version of Ruby. Is Ruby 2.2, right? So and then the stack we use is MySQL, Redis, RabbitMQ, right? And all of these are already. We don't have problem with all of these, right? So when we receive IO requests, right? When we have during the peak periods, right? All of the databases are fine. However, the only one problem we have is with Ruby's web server, which is Passenger. Now, so when I did my research, there are different web servers for Ruby, right? And there are different ones that have been optimized for high load, right, and high performance. And but I think because of how old and how legacy the code base is, their Passenger is running on a very old optimization, right? So now we are forced to like work with it pending the time where, okay, another thing I forgot to hide is that we have, so for the Ruby applications, right, we have like up to like 30 daemons running. So these daemons, we can think about them like services, right? So like, let's say we have like notification service, payment services. So we have all of these daemons running, and they are all running together as in one application. So it's like a monolithic monster, right? So now we already know, I mean, on the engineering team, that the solution to this, the long-term solution to this, is decoupling the daemons, right, out of the application, right? But because of the fact that we are using an old version of Ruby, that means that first of all, before we even think about decoupling, we have to work on upgrading our version of Ruby, and that is like another technical depth on its own, right? So now we now thought, okay, let's see how we can scale the Ruby web server so that pending the time we're able to fix our technical debt of decoupling the daemons out, how can we scale, how can we manage Ruby applications with what we have so that it can be able to scale. So the amount of requests we are looking to scale to for now is still like 100,000 requests per second.
Mm-hmm. So,
and what we are currently doing and what we are currently handling, it's not even up to like 20,000.
So you expect your traffic to go up to about 100,000 requests per second. Currently, you're maxed out at almost 20,000 requests per second. What you've tried so far is vertically scaling. You'd like to horizontally scale, but there's some architectural problems right now, I think I read somewhere, where you aren't able to scale horizontally.
Yes.
So
scaling horizontally for us means a lot of changes, a lot of technical depth.
Yeah, which you can't do in the short amount of time. So the question is then, if we have about a week left, what are some other things we could consider to do to scale this? They're actively re-architecting the system to decouple, and they're on Ruby 2.2. Let's see, is every request read-only, or is it modifying data?
Yeah, it's modifying data. So it's a cryptocurrency exchange, right? Mm-hmm. So let me add something too. So So we already have, like I mentioned in the comments, right? We already have caching set up. And there was a time I tried to set up failovers, right? So that even if you're unable to scale horizontally, right? Let us have failover so that when one server goes down, especially during deploys, right? Most times when we are running deploys, the daemons have to restart for like 5 minutes, right? So I have to set up like failover servers. Now, the problem with that is that we realize that the daemons cannot run concurrently. So when I mean concurrently, that means that we cannot have double instance of the daemons running. It creates conflict in the entire application. So because of that, even setting up failovers is an issue because, I mean, every time we create another instance of the server, we have to stop all the daemons or else the whole application will be in chaos. So that's another thing too.
So, I mean, I really don't see any other option than continuing with the vertical scaling. But and then you can't even, I guess, even with the vertical scaling, you can't even have more threads or more processes because of the same concurrency issues.
Yes, no, we can. So I've been looking into Passenger a lot, like, so trying to see how Passenger can run multi-threading and like multi-processes, right? I think that should be able to help us.
I don't think, I mean, okay, so I'm going to pause before I add anything else. Anybody else have any thoughts that come to mind?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I got a conclusion about all this. I think that the architecting of a system is a first and most important step and in designing such system, because then you run into issues which you cannot fix in amount of time that you are given.
Yeah, so so in the amount of time, I don't think there is a realistic fix for it. But is there some low-hanging fruit? Like, I think one of the best things would be if you could make the system more asynchronous so that you can offload all these incoming requests more to a queue, whether it be your Rabbit, Kafka, or Kinesis, and then process those as fast as you can, but with letting go those requests as fast as possible.
Oh yes, we are doing that currently. I mean, so we have, but because I think because of the kind of business we are in, right?
Yeah.
Most times things can't stay in queues for too long, right? I mean, things can stay even like a second is even almost like too much for requests to stay in queue, right? So I think that's another challenge. But I think what I would like to know now is how, okay, now if we are to re-architect this properly, like let's even forget the 1 week, right? If we are to architect this properly, how would you suggest we go about this?
Definitely moving to a message bus or like a event log type system. So making as much of it go into Kinesis, and then everything is just decoupled automatically that way.
Even SQS would work.
Or SQS, yeah.
Yeah. Also investigate if you don't serve static data through your application, and if you can offload it to some kind of CDN like CloudFront. Yeah. This would put a little bit less pressure on web servers.
I was thinking the same, especially given the 1 week timeline. Is some sort of CDN on top in front of the static content might give them a little bit of breathing room. Yeah. Not likely to be 5x, but maybe some sort of breathing room, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Separating all get traffic from basically put and post traffic. So so you know exactly how much compute you need for post.
So why isn't it horizontally scalable? Like that seems to be like you said, you just figured out that it can't be horizontally scaled. It's not able to be done.
Some application cannot be horizontally scalable. I just work with one company from Germany, and they used Elixir, and because of that, they just cannot. Well, they created the application in a way. It's not fault of Elixir, but it was just the way it is, and they need to do a lot of changes. They cannot afford the changes, so they need to scale vertically.
Since this is a blockchain company, I imagine then there's maybe some issues with transactions across multiple services and how that locking would happen.
Yeah, so yeah, that's another problem we've been having. So I think the problem I've been having all day, I've been trying to resolve all day. So we're having a situation where, so we can imagine a situation where we are trying to get data out of Redis, but there is like an IO block. You know, data. Some data are meant to like run query asynchronously, right? So because of the version of Ruby, so there is it's blocking. So it waits until the query is out before it processes, right? But in the upgraded version of Ruby, I think they have a fix for that. But I can't work with the fix, right? So I have to look for a way to manage that within the application, right? So yeah, those are some of the challenges we are having. But then yeah, I think like everyone said, I am going to look at ways to like offload some major things and just like try to offload major component and see how that improves the whole performance.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember Mongrel 2? I'm dating myself now probably by bringing it up, but I really thought it was a pretty awesome architecture they'd come up with for a web server. The biggest problem was that it didn't support WebSockets when I looked at it. Now it does. So the idea with Mongrel 2 is it's like a translator between HTTP requests and then ZMQ. So a 0MQ as the message bus. Maybe it supports other ones now. But what's cool about this is instead of doing this old school model where you're round robining load balancing or load balancing to the least requested, these are all heuristics. In the Mongrel 2 approach, you're just throwing every request into the queue, and the first available worker is just taking its responses, taking those requests as fast as it can, posts the messages back to the responses back to the queue, and then the web server, the Mongrel 2 server is streaming those responses back to the users. I haven't seen this pattern implemented in other web servers, and it does require the application to use the ZMQ protocol, but I like that architecture.
Sounds cool.
Speaking of different web servers, has anyone had a chance to use Caddy 2 yet? I read an article about it. And it sounds really cool.
Caddy 2?
Yeah.
Heard about it a few times. Never had any real reason to jump from Nginx to it, though.
It's a web server written in Golang.
Yeah, Caddy is great. I've used Caddy a lot.
Sorry, somebody just spoke, but their voice cut out. Oh, you can just restate what you said. That's all. So what are
I think Caddy's big claim to fame is automatic HTTPS by default. I think is their claim to fame, and they use, I believe, Let's Encrypt to do that.
The Let's Encrypt encryption or integration. Yep.
But it's like, and their other big click on documentation, and then on the left, click on Caddy file. This is their other big claim to fame. You know, you might have a really verbose, the one under reference there, Caddy file on the left.
Yeah, I thought I clicked Caddy
There's
file.
two. Under you're under tutorials, go to reference.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Caddy file. So their other big claim to fame is you might have a really verbose like Nginx config file. This is an entire Caddy file, you know, that configures Caddy in 4 lines, right? So their other big claim to fame is it's much less verbose. And it looks nice.
Declarative.
And it sounds like it's not something that they 100% support, you know, as GA yet. It's more kind of in beta, but it sounds like it can also ingest things like Nginx config files as well. So you could, like, you know, just switch out your Nginx for Caddy and still use your old config file.
I just wonder if taking care of SSL certificates is a good thing for proxy like that.
But it is becoming more and more.
That's a good question.
like traffic.
What about offloading on some external service like ALB?
Well, the way I took that comment was, is it better to terminate TLS at your server or in front of your server, like with Nginx Ingress in Kubernetes or Istio or whatever? And I think I am in the camp of, it's better to terminate TLS, before it actually hits your server, because then it's much easier to develop. But I don't know.
End-to-end TLS is sometimes required, though, isn't it? I don't know. I've done both ways.
I think the end-to-end TLS might be a little bit easier, actually, if you're then terminating the connections in Kubernetes itself and then using Istio with MTLS to encrypt all the traffic inside the cluster.
Yeah.
But my only point is, if that's the only claim to fame, to me, that's a solved problem these days with a lot of these things. Also, there are a lot of more mainstream Ingress controllers out there that also support it out of the box.
This CrackD that some people use a lot, as far as I know. And
say that one more time.
There's also Kraken D, which is like also API gateway, but it's actually like just like an Ingress, like.
Did you say Kraken?
With K.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Which is an awesome rum if you're a drinker, by the way. So.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool. Now let's see what other talking points we had. All right, so we covered this one. Hopefully we gave you, HS, some food for thought there. I don't think we gave any answers per se, but let us know how it goes.
Sorry. I have maybe a point that we can add. It's EKS 1.16 is an AWS GA. Like you can now have Kubernetes 1.16 and AWS,
That's nice.
which is pretty amazing, I think, because last time it took, I think, half a year to get like 1.15.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there was some conversation about that in SuiteOps.
I posted it when it was time. I think I posted it in the AWS channel.
Oh, in the AWS channel. I think the gist of it was that the AWS had invested a lot of engineering resources to speed up this process, and that they took that hit in terms of getting 1.15 out. That's what somebody said here.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Oh.
That's good. Well, I look forward to when 1.18 is out there. And so I've also, DigitalOcean, I'm surprised at how fast they're churning out releases or supported releases. Obviously, different scale.
As far as I know, DigitalOcean is basing their releases on top of K3S.
Mm.
So they don't do so much groundwork in terms of like how they have to deploy. While with EKS, they basically deploy a lot of the stuff themselves and maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have their own API server. It's not like official one. That's all.
Okay, so it looks like they're also on 1.16 and not supporting later. Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
I thought they had 1.18.
I watched a few minutes of a presentation by a guy from HashiCorp. My company does, lunch and learn type things every week. And he was talking a bunch about Nomad. And, maybe I'm in the, little Kubernetes bubble, But I mean, is Nomad still widely used very much, or I thought Kubernetes kind of won that war.
I heard some people were using it as an alternative to Kubernetes if they thought it was too complex to use Kubernetes for their particular workloads. So I haven't seen anyone actually using it though.
Exactly. They're not trying to compete with Kubernetes in that sense. They're trying to appeal to users who want the power of Kubernetes, but something simpler. Oops, I didn't mean to post that there. As a simpler alternative to Kubernetes. And yeah, HashiCorp has pledged, like, this is not going away. I think it's part of their HashiCorp suite of products that they're getting into enterprises.
Yeah, Terraform, Vault, Console, and Nomad.
Yeah.
Is there.
And I bet if they don't have it already, I bet they're doing things like site licenses soon, where you just buy into their whole suite of infrastructure management products. And the tight integration that it offers with both console and service discovery, and, cross data center clusters.
Hey, Eric, on that EKS 116 thing, the one thing to keep in mind too is the 113 end of life because of the whole 3 versions thing. So there's some wording about, I think it's June, where you'll get automatically upgraded.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's see here. Or EKS versions.
The 1.12 upgrades are happening like this week or next week. You know how I know? Because we still have a 1.12 cluster.
That's what I mean by the 113. You're gonna go, good news. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the release notes of 1.16.
Right. So they'll get automatically upgraded? See, I haven't.
Yeah. You'll stop.
If you don't do it, they're gonna automatic. Yeah.
So how are you facing like API changes and things like that? Or has anyone dealt with that?
You deal with it before they automatically make you deal with it.
Yeah. So
did 1.13 have API changes? I know that 1.16 has.
Oh yeah. So May 11th.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We've got a 1.12 cluster that's running all kinds of stuff that we have to upgrade.
Yeah.
Reportedly, 1.12 to 1.13 is supposed to be just hit the button and life goes on, But my paranoid aspect gets the best of me with that kind of stuff.
As far as I know, the next risky one after 0.9, I think it is now 1.16, where you have to change a lot of stuff. Because there the deployments API gets deprecated, like or removed the Viva and Beta thingy. So
yeah,
like
I remember that.
Completely make the case for a monochart based Helm kind of driven pipeline to me. So
I upgraded to 1.16 recently, and they got rid of completely the extensions v1 beta 1 API. Which, if you've been following their patching instructions for kube proxy, it only updates the image tag, and it will still be using that remove API. And so kube proxy stopped working.
Okay.
Oops.
Well, I forget what it looked like exactly. Was it like
extensions /
but
v1 beta 1?
Extensions and deployments, as far as I know. It's both
yeah,
of them.
But it's only for things like deployments and daemon sets. It's still available for ingress until I think 118 or 120.
Yeah. How do you do a Helm mono repo for your because I'm kind of in the boat right now where I have my Helm shards living with the application because I versioned them together. But it kind of gets stupid because the people that have it in their code base, they are complaining and so on. How do you manage it right now? Like, do you have like a second repository with like 10 different help charts then there for your own applications, or?
Get rid of managing Helm charts. Yeah, you use Zach has something interesting to share on that. What we've been doing for the last couple years now, I think, is the mono chart. So if you go to Cloud Posse charts, it's just treat the chart as an interface for how to deploy an app. And
right,
then,
make it so it's like making the pieces of your puzzle for the rest of the charts. So it's just like a top level chart, right?
Yeah.
Am I mistaken?
So we never write any charts anymore. If we when we do a client engagement, we almost never need to write a Helm chart because the mono chart solves 99% of the cases we need to deploy.
Is that kind of similar to like the incubator raw chart where you can just throw whatever you want in it?
Yes, but way more narrowly focused.
So yeah, they're on either side of the spectrum. So the raw chart is zero opinionation. You put raw Kubernetes resources in there and you use Helm as a deployment mechanism and versioning mechanism. Versus the mono chart is on the other side of the spectrum, highly opinionated way to deploy your service to Kubernetes. I'm not saying you have to use our mono chart and our opinion for how to do it, but your organization should be opinionated on how you deploy your services to Kubernetes and only vary that interface as necessary. So what's cool is when you look at two services deployed at our customer, one might be on monochart, I don't know, 1.0, and the other can be on monochart 2.0, and we say, oh, okay, they're just using two different interfaces to the same chart. And you don't have to figure out line by line what is different between two charts and the sprawl and technical debt that piles up as a result of doing that.
What kind of interface are you providing? Are you just saying, hey, yeah, you can use all the values that you want, or?
So yeah, we have some examples here. So it's basically taking, what we're saying is define the schema for deploying your app. And that schema can be custom to your organization and opinionated to your organization. Here is our opinionated way of doing that. So here's how you define the Docker config. Here's how you define the image you're going to use for this service. Here's how you define a config map and make it really easy to expose environment variables, very easy to mount configuration files. Here's how you define secrets. Same interface as config map, it's just a different resource type. Here's how you do inline environment variables when you want to do that. Here's how to deploy do a deployment. Is it enabled or disabled? Maybe for my service, I don't need a deployment, so I'm going to make that disabled. And then we have the same kind of schema for a stateful set, for a job, etc. So we've implemented all the standard cases and just exposed kind of the minimum level of complexity that we need for that.
Okay. Huh.
But then when you look at the mono chart itself, yeah, I mean, this is a master class in writing Helm charts, you know, and it gets pretty gnarly.
Very gnarly. But when you have it working, it's awesome. It's a great pattern. It really can save you a whole lot of time and hassle and eliminate technical debt down the line. So,
but keep in mind,
where would you put the values? Like, do you put the values in your code repository?
So yeah, so then we use values is solved because we use Helm file. So if I show you an example of that, then
okay, so you deploy via Helm file, like you define your Helm file and run a separate pipeline, and deployment is not bound to the commits into master in your repository.
So Helm file lets us define all the environments that we want, and then with one chart. And keep in mind, our chart is gnarly because we have to support more variation between more customers and more people deploying apps in different ways. You as a company can be a lot more strict and a lot more opinionated and only support a few specific kinds of deployment mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, what I do just right now is like I use the standard Helm templates, like template it out, remove all the like templating that comes default with it, and then I just introduce templating to what I actually need templating for. So that's how I do it right now, to have as little templating as possible. But
Yeah, so what you would do instead would just set up a mono chart and instead derive Helm charts from that and just pick and choose the pieces that you want.
yeah,
And create subcharts in a way that would then be used by your various deployments. I mean, that's another way of doing it without Helm file at least. So
You had an example of your version of a mono chart.
oh, it'd be a poor example to use. I mean, I didn't really modify it much, but I mean, it would include everything from Spark submit-based cron jobs and you know all sorts of different things that were required for a particular engagement I was on. So
I only wanted to share it as a alternative example of somebody using that pattern.
yeah, it was actually under the charts, I think.
There we go. Yeah.
Put it have as an archetype chart when I was thinking I knew what I was doing and using my own names and stuff. So
I'll check it out.
That makes a lot of sense. There's a niche for each kind of way to go about it. This is something that I would hand to a developer who knows how to create a custom Helm chart, but would use this instead to do it faster, versus someone who has no freaking idea. We've got these, opinionated Helm files set up where, all you have to do is include the Helm file, and then it's got a bunch of required parameters that you put in, and boom, you're done,
Yeah, it's the same kind of concept as you have with that. Basically, with Helm file, you're presenting a really nice schema of environments that the developer can set up. And the way, but so here's the thing that we see, or where the intersection is a little bit. How complicated do you want your Helm files to be, and do you want to offload some of that complexity to the chart? And that's where that decision is. What I would probably start by doing is what you're doing, is have more of that complexity initially in Helm file until you see the patterns emerge. And then once you see a common pattern, now offload that into the chart again so that the Helm files remain as minimal and simple as possible.
Yeah.
And Helm did just graduate the CNCF thing,
Nice.
so yeah, just recently. Whether you like it or hate it, it made it. So
That's poetic.
I've gotten pushback on Terraform lately due to it being 0.0 still. What's your guys's I know, and it's like, there's hundreds, thousands of people using it, companies using it in production all over the place, whatever, but they see that 0.0 and go, oh no, we can't use beta software. What's the response?
Just say the 0 is silent.
Policies to December.
The 0 is silent? I like it.
the 0 is silent.
That's good. The 0 is silent.
That is good. Yeah.
I mean, the only issue that you currently have is that the APIs are not stable. So that what also happens a lot is that you have to adapt and change your code to be like compliant with 0.12, for example, like had a lot of syntax changing and so on. So that's the only thing that can happen at any time where you have to invest again. But other than that,
the enterprise way is to not update at all, right?
Yeah, right. You don't update anyways, right? So.
But I mean, 0.11 was around for what, 2 years or something? So I don't. 0.12 is like going from 1.0 to 2.0. You've got breaking changes there too. So what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, maybe HashiConf this year they'll announce a 1.0.
What was the alternatives that they have?
I doubt it. They'll announce 0.13.
What's the alternatives that they have provided you with?
Oh, I don't know. It's mostly just bitching. They see that I'm using Terraform and go, oh, you're using a beta software when you should be using insert random other tool X, whether it's CloudFormation or, whatever.
You should.
I mean, you can. Sorry, Eric. You can use Pulumi. It uses Terraform modules and is version 2.1. I don't know.
Oh, we hacked that one.
They probably wouldn't even bat an eye if that were the case.
That's scary.
So
it's funny.
Like the AWS provider is version 2.x. So I mean,
it's all about the provider, right? You know,
yeah,
that version is the one that matters.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
All right, everyone, we got to wrap this up. We're at the end of the hour. Everyone's got their meetings to go to. So I appreciate everyone for showing up. We had an awesome turnout today. I think we peaked out at around 25, 26 people. So that about wraps things up. Remember to register for our weekly office hours. If you haven't already, go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. If you want to book a session with me, you can always go to cloudposse.com/quiz, and I look forward to talking to you. Thanks again, everyone, for sharing. Always learn a lot from these calls. The recording of this call is going to be posted to the Office Hours channel and syndicated to our podcast at podcast.cloudposse.com. See you all next week, same time, same place.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.